I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know offhand, like as far as the Safety Commission and Criminal Justice, where you're looking to sort of budget some money there? What are you thinking about as your first steps in that?
We didn't get how we started walking through them last week, so we had only about an hour as a whole commission last week to start looking at it. We didn't get to that work group's recommendations yet in terms of money. But, some things like, and it's another kind of low-hanging fruit thing. I love that phrase, Bob. It's like so we have a lot of times when something goes wrong in a community, our first responders are the ones who get called and they show up. And if they don't recognize what they're seeing, if they don't know that it's because of someone's mental illness or developmental disability that their behavior maybe had somebody call the police on them, so that first support for training for our first responders, I think that will be something that you will see money in this year's budget for sure. Okay. Because our state police are doing that training and they are trained. But most of our local agencies have never had the support and resources for that crisis intervention sort of training. And there are states around the nation that are doing it really, really well. And if you could, and again, it's all part of this idea of trying to divert people from the criminal justice system, from corrections, if we can, because once they're there, things, they tend to cycle and people tend to stay there once they're there. But if we can have our first responders trained to recognize that somebody really needs some treatment or support or needs a place to come back from the edge of a crisis, and we have places in the community we can take them, which is the second piece that we don't always have, like where, and some of our sheriffs, I told you the story of how many of our folks in our local county jails are actually need treatment. But I had one sheriff and it was the Marquette County one, who's got 80% of his folks who really just need treatment. And he said flat out, he's like, but there's nowhere else to take them. And at least here in my care, they have a safe place to sleep. They're being fed. They are, they're not hurting themselves or someone else. At least we can provide that. That's a really low bar, but at least that's an important, consideration. So I think in public safety, you'll see those two things immediately probably addressed, is some more funding for training, and then trying to figure out where in each community we have a place for folks to go when we find that that's what they really need is treatment, even if it's just short-term crisis management, not put them in the jail.
So what about, what more talk have you had about, because I'm curious to see the numbers for, especially, here in Washtenaw County, I'm really curious to see the numbers about our juveniles that are in the system and what percentage of them could really be diverted to some other forms. I'm really curious to see those numbers. I'd really like to see them.
And that one, I apologize, that was one of the recommendations of this commission, is that we need a juvenile, a parallel for juveniles for a diversion council, but it won't even be created until the governor issues that executive order. So we're still, probably months away from really knowing anything from that. But our attention's on it for the first time, which I think is really important.
And then even in the way that we classify juveniles across the state, because you have, for us, at the age of 17 or even 16 and some months, you can go to the county jail.
Right.
But you're still, responsible, your parents are still responsible for your care until you're 18 type of thing. And that's not, it's not the same across the state. So, I don't know, I'm just...
It's really interesting stuff to think about, right? Like, I think we'll probably see a lot of the same issues that we bumped into with that lack of standardization, and it's also like making a decision as a state what we value, right? And so this whole idea of diversion is we're saying we value people getting access to care and not ending up in the correction system if that's not really where they belong. And with juveniles in particular, like if we can do everything we can to keep our young people from bumping into the correction system, then that is in all of our long-term interest and financially. And it has to be, I think you're right, Bob, it has to be that we have to talk about the dollars and cents a lot more than ever before. It feels less natural to me, because I think about things in terms of what's the right thing to do and how do we make our state the place that we want to live and how do we treat our citizens like we would want to be treated if we were in their spot. But the dollars and cents just really add up especially with, correction systems costs are so high. It's so much money. And in our overall state budget, just thinking about our state prisons, we spend a full quarter of all of our general fund flexible money, a full quarter goes straight to corrections. And if there's a way to,
It's about the same amount as for education, isn't it? In the budget line item. More?
We're one of 5 states in the nation that pay more for corrections than we do for higher education. Our K-12 education is bigger, and it's separate. It's not part of the general fund money.